We will now start the conference with a short video, since the German ambassador, who was supposed to speak first today, for technical reasons cannot join us. He has recorded a video, and we are going to watch this first before we then hear the words of greeting from the Belarusian embassy in Germany. Thank you.
Meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, уважаемые дамы и господа. Ich freue mich sehr, Sie als Botschafter der Bundesrepublik Deutschland in Belarus zur ersten deutsch-belarussischen IT-Konferenz Deutschland trifft das Silicon Valley von Osteuropa begrüßen zu können. Я очень рад приветствовать вас как посол Федеративной Республики Германия в Беларуси на первой германо-белорусской IT-Konferenz. Ich möchte allen Organisatoren und Sponsoren, die diese Konferenz möglich gemacht haben, für ihre großartige Инициативе ganz herzlich danken. Хочу поблагодарить всех организаторов и спонсоров этой конференции за прекрасную инициативу. Die deutsch-belarussischen Beziehungen leben vom Engagement, von der Kreativität, der Empathie und dem Interesse aneinander. Sie haben sich in den letzten Jahren in allen Bereichen sehr dynamisch entwickelt. Das gilt für die Politik, für die Kultur, für den Austausch zwischen unseren Zivilgesellschaften, aber auch und ganz besonders für unsere Wirtschaftsbeziehungen. Nun müssen wir diese Dynamik aufrechterhalten. Deshalb freut es mich ganz besonders, dass Außenminister Maas und sein belarussischer Kollege Mackay in Berlin im Oktober letzten Jahres beschlossen haben, eine bilaterale strategische Beratergruppe einzurichten. Sie wird bis Ende des Jahres Vorschläge unterbreiten, wie wir unsere Beziehungen weiter mit Inhalt füllen und strategisch fortentwickeln können. Die ersten Arbeitstreffen waren sehr inhaltsreich und vielversprechend. Конечно, пандемия коронавируса бросает нам особенные вызовы, но в каждом кризисе кроются новые шансы. Мы, кстати, не раз имели возможность убедиться в этом в странах ЕС. Кризис показывает, что мы как никогда зависим друг от друга. И в то же время он делает более заметным неиспользованный потенциал для сотрудничества. Сюда, без сомнения, входит IT-сектор наших стран. В Германии существует огромная потребность в дигитализации. А Беларусь обладает динамичным IT-сектором, который стал движущей силой экономического роста. Это отличные предпосылки для дальнейшего развития сотрудничества. Я уверен, что в качестве партнера по технологиям Германия во многих ключевых областях промышленности и экономики Беларуси сможет играть еще более важную роль для дальнейшей модернизации, развития и диверсификации белорусской экономики. Поэтому я очень рад, что удалось организовать эту онлайн-конференцию, которая сможет стать важным цифровым мостом между нашими странами и превратиться в центральную площадку для контактов и налаживания связей. Желаю вам успехов и интересных бесед. Спасибо вам.
We will now broadcast the video of the Ambassador Sidorenko, because we still have some technical issues, and so we will send you now the greeting words from the Belarusian embassy in Germany.
Hi, my name is Denis Sidorenko. I'm Ambassador of Belarus to Germany. Together with our German partners, we are working hard to create more opportunities and synergies in our bilateral cooperation to match our comparative advantages. Digital economy and IT sector is a perfect field for such an interaction. I'm delighted that we have now on board in these efforts people, very engaged people from German politics, business and IT communities. Please join us. Digital Belarus and our high-tech park will positively surprise you.
Dann schlage ich vor, starten wir mit den Herrn Hauptmann und danach mit Herrn Kulitz.
All right, I hope you can all hear us and hear me. And first of all, thanks to Jakob Wöllenstein and the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, as well as our German ambassador Manfred Uterer, who's very committed to support such a program that we have originally decided to visit in Minsk. And it's a shame that during the Corona pandemic, our visit with the German ecosystem of startups and venture capital companies was not possible yet. But as far as I saw the message also from the Belarusian ambassador, Denis Sidorenko, travels to Belarus are now possible again. And I'm pretty sure that in the next coming weeks, we will have also a physical meeting. But thanks to the organizers for having a digital meeting first. My name is Mark Hauptmann, and I'm the rapporteur for startups and the venture capital ecosystem in the German parliament for Angela Merkel's party, Christian Democrats. And as you can imagine, it's a pleasure for me from a perspective in the Committee of Economics and Energy to support all possibilities to foster a stronger dialogue between the Belarusian and the German startup ecosystem. And in my second function, I'm the head of the German-Belarusian parliamentary group, the friendship group between two countries. And therefore, I've been traveling to Minsk several times and also have been able to visit Kirill and his colleagues in the high-tech park several times, and I was amazed. I was amazed to see what's going on in Minsk, in the high-tech park, to see a lot of very interesting startup companies that work on latest stage technologies, whether it's app programming, whether it's finding solutions for well, basically the problems of our times in the digital world. And therefore, I truly believe that if we bring the Belarusian startup ecosystem together with the German one, especially between Minsk and Berlin, then I think it's a win-win situation for both sides. Minsk is only 2 hours away, so from Berlin it's the same travel distance like London. And therefore, this is something between neighbors. And if we talk about distances, then of course we talk about that in a digital world, distances play almost no matter anymore. And therefore, it's great to see that Kirill was here together with his colleagues from the high-tech park, and I welcomed him in the German parliament. And first steps have already been established to set up a link between our two countries and between our two startup ecosystems. And now, thanks to the CAS, it is our duty to promote further exchanges and to identify areas of cooperation where we can bring the two different groups of startups, but also regarding finances, the venture capital scene, the business angels together, because I truly believe that here we can create something that will have a big impact for the German startups in their working relations with the Belarusian ones. But also when we talk about financing for German venture capital companies, the aim is not to buy and to catch a company from Belarus to Germany, but maybe to invest, keep the jobs in Minsk, and therefore also work together for a more prosperous Belarus in the IT sector. So if we look at what we have reached in the last couple of weeks in very troubling times due to the Corona pandemic, we've seen that the startup ecosystems were the first ones to be hit, whether it's in the field of investments, whether it's in the field that startups had a difficult time with their relatively young field of expertise. And in Germany, we supported our startup ecosystem with a 2 billion euro package aid program right away. And we are keen to also invest another 10 billion euros for the next 10 years to build up a future fund that invests in the growth stage of startups. And if you look at such programs, of course, the aim is to support German startups in the German ecosystem. But we also ask this fund structure then to invest abroad. And this is, I believe, a big opportunity also for Belarus and for the Belarusian startups. And therefore, I think when we have the next couple of meetings also as live meetings, when we bring German venture capital companies to Minsk, when we bring German startups to Minsk, when we invite further further visits coming from Belarus to connect with the German ecosystem, then I believe we can really make this vision, the Silicon Valley of Eastern Europe, an even more prosperous reality. So this is something where I'm very thankful that the Konrad Adenauer Foundation is stepping in this field of future technologies, in this field of bridging our two countries. And thanks to the support of the two ambassadors, Denis Sidorenko as the Belarusian ambassador in Germany, but also Manfred Huterer, the German ambassador in Minsk, we can really get things done and make this vision reality. And therefore, you can always count on me, myself, and the support that I will give to this project. And I will leave it up for any further questions later on and give it to my great colleague Alex Kulitz, who I like very much in the German parliament, because he's also a supporter of innovation and also our export-oriented economy. And export-oriented means bringing together two countries and bringing together two ecosystems where they can mutually benefit from each other. Thanks to Jakob Böllenstein and all the organizers for the seminar, and hope to see you soon in Minsk when we have physical meetings, hopefully sooner than later.
Well, thanks a lot, Mark, for these comments. It's always very difficult to speak after Mark because everything has been said already, so it doesn't really make sense if I step in with too many things that I want to put on the floor, considering the whole project, which I dearly support in any possible way. Also, my thanks definitely go to the two ambassadors who are very supportive on both sides, Mr. Sidorenko and Mr. Huterer in Belarus, but also to Mr. Böllenstein, the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, as well as Stefan Hoffmann, who was co-organizing. So thanks a lot for having me here and having me join this conversation. Last time we went to Belarus, we had a small delegation of entrepreneurs, mainly from family offices and family businesses with us. I think, Kirill, you still remember when we were visiting the high-tech park. It was a very fabulous time, and we were amazed by the power and also yes, not only the power, but the creativity that also lies within the Belarusian startup scenery. And not only me as a politician, when I came back home, mainly the entrepreneurs, they were the guys who said, Alex, we really have to focus on that. We really have to do it again. So we're all very much looking forward. And I see Stefan Kegebein from the Ostausschuss, the German BDI. They're also very supportive. They helped a lot with this first delegation trip. And I think we're all very much looking forward once this Corona pandemic is done, that we have a future, that we are able to come back and very much focus on the special projects and on the concrete projects, on how we will continue. For one, and Mark already mentioned it, the financing is definitely one of the things where we as politicians can step in and at least assure that the framework is appropriate, so that there is possibilities for not only the venture capital companies from Germany, but one thing that might be very interesting also for the Belarusian startup scenery is mainly the what we call family offices, because as some of you might know, the German economic system is very different to most other European economic systems, as many of our companies, the small and medium-sized companies and the so-called hidden champions, are usually run by one person or by a family. A lot of capital is kept in those family offices and those family businesses. And I believe this is a very huge potential also for Belarusian ideas and Belarusian startups, if they get to cooperate not only with venture capital or other companies that are in this sector anyhow, but also with special hidden champions, special companies, family businesses, the Mittelstand companies, as we call them, because they have a very big interest in looking abroad, in looking other countries and finding out where's the technology going, what are the ideas, what's the creativity. And I'm quite sure that if we get to match the right people, there might be a lot of possibilities, a lot of options, a lot of corporations that might work out very well. So on the political side, it's mainly our task, and I'm sure that Mark will assist, and we will try to do on our side the very best we can to assure that there is the right channels, the right possibilities on whatever reason, especially on the cross-border side, if we are looking for capital flow and for possibilities for investment on both sides. Well, me personally, I'm very much looking forward, once this whole pandemic is gone and done, to assist, especially in setting up and finding some potential people who are willing to once again come to Belarus and find the right matching partners. I'm very much looking forward on that, and looking forward today on this talk. And hopefully there's many fruitful discussions and questions that we might be able to answer. But let me also finish by welcoming you all whenever possible to come to Germany. We will be very happy to help you finding the right partners also on our side. Sometimes it makes sense, like last time when Kirill came over with a small delegation from the high-tech park, presenting the high-tech park also on the German, not only political side, but also with the BDI and Stefan Kegelbein and other potential, well, let me say customers almost. I think this is the right way, and this is where we should focus on. So I just want to finish with this warm welcome to all of you. If you happen to be in Germany, if you are interested in coming to Germany, please let us know so we can assist in any possible way that is necessary. Thanks a lot, and very much looking forward for this talk today. Yes, I'll leave it here and get the thing done. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Kulitz. Thanks, Mr. Hauptmann. Then I suggest continue with Kirill Zaletsky from High Tech Park. Kirill, could you take over, please?
Yes, thank you very much. It's a very great pleasure to be here in this virtual space and to see so many, let's say, friends. Mr. Hauptmann, Mr. Kulitz, we met in Berlin, we met in Minsk, now we met online. So it's my pleasure to see you here. So we met everywhere we could already, so we need to go another way around. I think that today's event is a very good opportunity for us to keep this momentum, not to make the pandemic, let's say, break our ties, because after all, if we still sit in our countries and our homes for a long time, we are just missing the opportunities. And I think that it's a very good format that we chose today. So as far as I think the majority of people here know High Tech Park, know the basic things about High Tech Park, so we agree that I will maybe elaborate on what happened in High Tech Park so far in 2020, because IT sector has been very vulnerable in many countries, but surprisingly in some other places it became, let's say, on top. And I will try to explain what's going on here in Belarus. So I will right now just switch to my presentation. 1 second, please. Okay. So I hope you can see my presentation, right? Okay. So the first new thing that was here in High Tech Park this year, I think it was the main event which happened here maybe in the first months of 2020 was the visit of State Secretary Pompeo to High Tech Park. He visited us here and he said that he was inspired. So it was a very important step for us, because the United States is like the half of the whole market of High Tech Park. And this was the only visit of State Secretary to some commercial meeting outside the political meetings in Minsk. And we consider it as the, let's say, kind of good evaluation of what we have done by now. So, and the results of last year also showed that we make good results. And last year, our High Tech Park made $2.2 billion in exports, growing plus 55%. It's far behind the neighboring countries, let's say, speed of exports, of growth of exports in terms of IT software and services. But after that, we got pandemic. And what we can see here from High Tech Park perspective, there are two maybe contradicting to each other trends for IT developers amid COVID-19, which we can follow here. The first one is that clients of big IT companies, they're cutting their budgets. So in some cases and in some countries, and even in neighboring countries with Belarus, the IT sector claims itself as that they suffered from COVID, and they urge for the government support in many ways. On the other hand, what we can see is that the COVID and the quarantine made everything online. So if before going online digitalization was just the means to upgrade your, let's say, efficiency, now this is what you need to survive, what every business needs to survive. So the first, I think that we can see some objective figures, and I try to follow the EPAM Systems, which is the biggest high-tech park resident. So we try to follow their share prices in the New York Stock Exchange, and we can see that in the middle of March, when the first pandemic measures like quarantine, like locking people at home started, there was some panic on the markets, I think, and also the many big enterprises, they cut their expenses, cut their budgets for IT services, and even we can see that EPAM shares, they went down by some 30%, but just 1 month after that, it got back, and now now the EPAM shares, and I will just reflect it to the whole IT sector of Belarus and many other countries, is going back. So we can see that IT sector is feeling more or less stable amid this pandemic, even though it was some dip. But if you look to the figures of high-tech park itself, we can see that actually here the IT sector didn't feel this pandemic very much. So we can see that experts from high-tech park, for the first 4 months, this is the statistic that is available right now for us, we can see that it grew 43% year on year. So I think it's a very good, let's say, figure, and we try to see what was month-to-month evaluation, and we can see that it's not only the first 2 months when pandemic was not very high in the world, but even March and even April show the same trends of experts from high-tech park. So we try to understand the nature of this kind, because in many countries, as I said, IT sector claims itself to suffer from COVID, and here in Belarus we can see that actually didn't feel it so much. So we can see that even the new companies also appeared in high-tech park in the first 4 months. So in the first 4 months, we got plus 82 new companies which were established and which entered high-tech park as new residents. And this is also the sign that the life is going on here in Belarus in high-tech park. Right now we have 63,000 developers in all the companies. So, and this is a very interesting thing. So we expected, and we actually were ready to see that the IT companies will cut their personnel amid COVID, because especially in outsourcing, when the budgets of their clients cut off, and so a lot of people are on bench, and the companies would have to cut people as well. But as we can see, so we took the statistics of our largest companies. We can follow the statistics of those companies where we have when they have 100 and more people in their headcount. So we have 96 such companies right now in high-tech park, and we can see that these 96 companies, they actually didn't cut their jobs, and they're creating more jobs. So in first quarter, they created almost 1,100 new jobs, and they employed totally 3,700 more people. And also we can see that even in April, which was maybe the most critical period of pandemic, even in this period, our companies, they are hiring, and they even created 220 new jobs. And I once again would like to point out that these are just the 96 largest companies with headcount over 100 people, because actually we do not keep track months on months basis for the smaller companies in high-tech park. But if you follow the news on the market, there are hundreds of companies who hire, and this made the stability of our sector even amid the pandemic. So, and I can see that what's the difference between Belarus and between high-tech park and our neighbors who claim that IT sector should be supported by the government. And I can see that, so my own perception is that in the last 3 years, high-tech park and Belarus IT sector made this very, let's say, healthy improvement in its quality. So before we were more about outsourcing, about working for some external orders. Now you can see that the share of product companies doubled, more than doubled. It's like 2.5 times increased. And this, I would say, is the main trend right now here in high-tech park. So Belarus IT sector is in a very aggressive way transforming from outsourcing to the product, to new startups, to new companies. And even so, I would say that even those figures are not very correct a lot, because the majority of outsourcing companies here in Belarus, they are trying to develop their own products and to move those products on the external markets, because this situation just says it should be so. Also, I would like maybe to show this figure that even amid COVID-19, we have more and more foreigners relocated here to high-tech park. So we have around 2,100 foreigners who relocated to high-tech park in the last it's like 2 years and a few months. And even in first quarter of 2020, we have plus 300 something foreigners who relocated to Belarus to work in high-tech park. And actually, as we can see, and we can expect that this tendency will still be on, let's say, growing pace, because too many, in the middle of pandemic, too many programmers are needed to develop the online software services and to develop their own products. Especially, we can name that those who won in all this, if we can say that anyone won from this pandemic situation, I think that those are all the software companies who work online. It's like gaming or services for just distant education or transportation, all kinds of sharing services, and maybe all kinds of, I don't know, like VR or AR, including entertainment or educational purposes, the telemedicine, and so on and so on. So finally, I would like to show that there are even 5 people who relocated to Belarus in the last 2 years. I think one of them is our colleague, Mr. Hoffman, who is here with us. And I think that this is a good sign also. And in my conclusion, I would like to say that here, right now, high-tech park is actually on its rise. So we were anxious that that COVID and pandemic can change something, but it just gave more and more opportunities for our companies. And I think that now this is a very good start for many like startups, many small companies who want to let's say, to continue developing their businesses and to go online. And I think that our event and our links with Germany is a very important step in our, let's say, bilateral cooperation, because of course we would like to have a good link to the European Union market and to have very good, let's say, prospects on this market. I will stop here. I know that in a few time our colleague from SBH Law Offices, Mr. Alexander Bonder, he will talk more about the latest, let's say, startup landscape of Belarus. But I will stop right here right now, and thank you very much once again.
Okay, Kirill, thank you very much for your words. Now we will continue with Tobias Kohler from Röder and Partner, Belarus, who will speak about the general investing into Belarus. Tobias?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We hear you very well.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you very much, and best greetings from my side here as well. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to share some insight on investment in Belarus. I'm trying to squeeze this experience in these 10 minutes which I have available. I'm now trying to share my desktop, and I hope you're able to see this.
It's working, yes.
Excellent. Yes, so this is a German perspective, but of course on the other hand it's also a inside view, because as you may have guessed already, I am German. I'm a German attorney at law. I am active in the region for already 15 years, and I'm responsible for the Minsk office of Röder and Partner. This is our agenda. I'll just start off with a few words about the company I'm working for. I will elaborate on some investment challenges coming straight from our practice. Then I will say a few words about investment structuring, what you should have in mind when you are planning to invest. Then, of course, the topic of financing and collateralization, as it is one of the main topics that are coming into play when you are considering an investment. And then I will try to round up my presentation with some takeaways. Röder and Partner, we are offering guidance via 109 offices, 49 countries around the globe. In Minsk, we are active since 2007, working here out of our Minsk office with 30 multilingual experts. And we are a very typical Röder and Partner office. Those of you who know us already or know us from other countries, we are very much multidisciplinary. That means we are providing legal services, tax, BPO, and financial advisory services. And over the last years, we were advising on some of the largest investment projects that have been implemented in Belarus. Among them, there was the largest private investment in the Belarusian history. And I'm happy to say that actually this was a German investment, which in total comprised of 24 companies and more than 5 countries involved, but the main target was actually in Belarus. So it is our task to clear the way for investments coming preferably from the so-called DACH region, meaning Germany, Austria, Switzerland. And this is also where the most of our clients are coming from. One of the first questions that investors or general companies coming from these regions are asking is it safe to invest in Belarus? And my answer usually is yes, it is. There is a legal framework in place which provides for this investment. It consists of local legislation, but also there are international treaties which were signed by Belarus. We have double taxation treaties also between Germany and Belarus when it comes to the avoidance of double taxation. There is also a bilateral investment treaty signed between Germany and Belarus, which gives German investors access to investor-state arbitration procedures. And the one thing you should keep in mind is that there is no agreement or convention between Germany and Belarus which provides for a mutual enforcement of judgments rendered by a state court. That means if you, for example, agree on Germany or a German court as a court venue to settle your disputes, you need to know that this might not be a very good idea, because any title you may gain there might not be enforceable in Belarus. there are some threats to investment projects in Belarus. I mean, whenever there are opportunities, there are of course threats, and especially venture capitals, they are very much familiar with, such investors are very much familiar with threats. I could tell you to all of these threats I put down here in the presentation, certainly kind of an interesting war story. Unfortunately, we don't have the time. Just to pick out a few, what you're sometimes dealing with in Belarus, and which might surprise you a bit, you have sometimes non-transparent owner structures. That means very often companies are run out of foreign holding companies due to various reasons. You see sometimes a complex financing structure, existing financing structure, even at a very early investment stage, various banks involved. I remember my personal record was 11 banks involved, and you can imagine then if you have to sort out here the collaterals, securities, where especially if you have a cross-collateralization, then this is becoming really challenging. Different accounting standards, mismatch of evaluation methods, that is something that is actually happening quite frequently, but we are here to sort this out and help you. So when it comes to structure and investment, you need to really analyze the situation. And the situation always, of course, also includes the legal, tax, and also the financial framework. But keeping this into mind, I'm sure we will gonna find a suitable structure for you. A very typical structure is, I've already mentioned it, that you have a foreign holding company, and then you have an investor which is actually acquiring shares in this foreign holding company as a equity contribution into this actual company in Belarus. So let's say an indirect investment. And here you should keep in mind that it's not possible to have a two-layer single shareholder structure in accordance with Belarusian law. And also, if you want to sign a shareholders agreement, which is usually a precondition for any, let's say, joint venture or any form where you have multiple shareholders in a company, this is possible in Belarus only if you have at least 3 shareholders. Yeah, so that is also one of the reasons why people choose offshore holding companies, unless we are talking about a resident of the high-tech park. Here, it is possible to have only 2 shareholders signing a shareholder agreement. And of course, tax should always be taken into account when structuring. Just to have the picture complete, in Belarus, you have the possibility also to establish investment funds. Financing collateralization, one of the main topics. Please always keep in mind that in Belarus, certain currency regulations are in place. For example, you need to notify the commercial banks on any receipt of loan from a foreigner. That means any local company who's receiving a loan must notify the commercial bank. Acquisition of stocks, as for example in a holding company, a foreign holding company, needs to be notified as well. The high-tech park, we've already heard about it, is acting as, also from a legal point of view, as a kind of a laboratory to try new, at least for Belarus, new legal forms, new forms of investment. For example, only here it is possible to have convertible loan agreements. Here is it possible to have option agreements and indemnification agreements. This said, you already understand that outside of the high-tech park, such kind of agreements are not permitted. There are other incentives. For example, here you can actually conduct the transactions in the period you see fit. You can agree on that. Outside of the high-tech park, you need to stick to the rules which are established by the law. Collaterals, a very, very important topic. Here you need to be aware of the fact that debt to equity swap, something which is very frequently used also in venture capital transactions, is in general not permitted by Belarusian law. Exception, again, if we are talking about a Belarusian resident. Unlike or outside of this form, you have a whole set of collaterals at hand, pledges. Here in Belarus, we have the so-called commercial pledge. That means the pledge will be entered into a register, very much like we know it from Germany as a mortgage, but it also works with any assets which are not fixed assets. Letter of credit, bank guarantee, all this set is available to you with certain specialities. What German investors or foreign investors tend to forget is that in Belarus, we are facing sometimes a very steep devaluation of the Belarusian currency, the Belarusian ruble. So this should be taken into account in whatever financial planning, modeling you have, and the proper application of tools to avoid such effects should be known and should be applied. To sum it up, I'm convinced that if you get acquainted with the national legal and tax compliance requirements at a very early stage, if you are conducting a proper and duly executed due diligence on a multi-level approach, I'm very much, especially when it comes to startups, I'm very much believing in a multi-level approach just to avoid sunk costs at the early stage, just to find out, to create a scope which is telling you at the very beginning, is it an interesting target for you or not, before you really go into a full-fledged due diligence. Then insist on carefully drafted and comprehensive documentation. Belarus is a very formalistic country, and you should adjust to that. I know it's sometimes difficult, especially when you're dealing with startups. Everything's very much hands-on, but proper documentation might save you in the worst case scenario. So I'm totally convinced that if you are taking these factors into account, if you are creative and flexible, the realization of a successful investment project in Belarus is definitely feasible, and we have seen many of these successful projects, and we are very proud that we were able to be a part of these successful projects. If you have any questions, if you want to have this presentation, please feel free to contact me, and I'm also staying, of course, available throughout the event for any questions you may have. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, Tobias, thank you very much for your presentation. Who will talk about venture capital in Belarus. Alexander, thank you very much.
Yes, hi to everyone. I believe that you hear me well. Can you allow me to switch on the presentation? Thank you. Yeah, is it okay?
It's okay. It's full visible. Very good.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and this great opportunity to have a real good talk between all of us. So first of all, I would say a few words about myself and our company. The first thing is that I will talk to you not only as a legal advisor, but also in a capacity of a participant of the venture capital market in Belarus, as for more than half of the year we are making and fundraising a new fund. I will tell you a few words about this. So mainly I will try to tell you all in a simple way about how the venture capital and startup ecosystem in Belarus is working. Saying a few words about my experience in the future, as a partner of the law firm, we see a really huge growth of investing IT startups in Belarus. You can see that those are the companies that were invested and advised by our law firm for the last 7 months or more than 10. If we started to speak about the startup and venture capital ecosystem 3 or 4 years ago, our conversation would have been very short. But now the life changed, and we really see a lot of real deals in all different spheres of startups. We also used to work with all venture capital and private equity funds in Belarus. Last year, we advised the Tech Minsk together with Google Launchpad, who made actually the first early stage venture capital fund in Belarus. We're also working with the Zuber Capital, the only one private equity local fund, and with other international institutional funds like European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, who also made several not only loan but equity investments together with Zuber Capital this year. So we also work with the largest international companies being present in Belarus, and we also see great activity to our country shown within last 3 years. What I can say in a simple way about Belarus ecosystem is any ecosystem, it consists of several parts and wouldn't have been created without any of them. So first of all, I would say a few words about the high-tech park. We talked a lot about it, but actually the high-tech park during last 2 or 3 years increased greatly the amount of companies in 2 ways. The first one, it allowed more companies to be the residents, and from 200 to 818 right now. On the another side, it approved the legislation, and now it boosted the startups and local companies to use these new legislation in the park and allowing to structure the investment deals like it should have been structured in Western jurisdictions. Second thing is the technical education, technical universities, and the people. So no ecosystem can exist without people. And in Belarus, we have a very good situation where we have very qualified technical specialists working on very good quality to expenses conditions. So here you can find very good technical specialists for very reasonable salaries. And that's why the amount of R&D centers of foreign companies also increased highly during last years. What is the another reason why there are so many startups appeared during last 2 or 3 years? We consider that for last 10 to 15 years, several companies became really huge, like very famous EPAM or Wargaming or any others. And they employ thousands of people, and they managed to make the people and their employees to be very qualified. And some of those people are quitting now the companies and now creating their own startups. So those old IT companies actually grew a new generation of the startups and the new generation of shareholders who do not afraid to start their own company. So I believe they influenced a lot that the new generation is now making new projects. For last several years, the whole infrastructure for startups was created. We can say that there is an incubator in high-tech park. There are like old players like Imaguru, which was one of the first accelerating program in Belarus, supported by USAID American fund. But also some new startup programs like Demium or Alpha Business Hub or Business Incubator Future with Us appeared just in 2019, helping the new companies to grow. Also see that a new event started several years ago and became so much popular, not only within the country, but in the CIS and neighboring regions like Emerge, which actually last year several thousand people participated in this event, and this year again thousands of people were participating in it, but online. We also can say that some smaller communities, you can see the 2012 map of communities creating not only in Minsk region, but you can see that Grodno, Vitebsk, Brest, and some other big cities of Belarus, the community is also created around the IT technologies. Now, what is about the money and the venture capital funds and other funds that exist in Belarus? Unfortunately, now we have the very low amount of venture capital funds financing the local companies. So what we can see on the early stage level, we have the Angels Band. The Angels Band grew rapidly for last 2 years. Now it has more than 200 of businessmen who invest, but in a very small checks on the early stage. Then, as I told you, the early stage VC fund called Tech Minsk was created last year, but it also about a very low amount of check, like $40,000 US dollars with the exact amount of follow-on. We also have RBF Ventures, which is the daughter company and subsidiary of Belarus State Fund and Russian Venture Capital, also state fund, who also made a couple of investments last year and making this year. Then on the growth stage, actually, when the venture capital funds invest in round A and plus, we have a gap. So actually, there are no venture capital funds who are investing on this stage. We have local investment companies like Haxus, Bulba Ventures, and X Capital, who are combining the money of their shareholders, but not in a form of a fund, and they invest in their own startups. So we have a gap actually in round A financing, and the future venture capital fund that we are raising in the moment, it will be called Colas Capital, wants to be in that gap and to invest in companies on growth stage. Then we have the private equity Zubr Capital and some institutional funds like EBRD, IFC, and others who invest not in venture stage, but actually on a normal company that have normal revenue and EBITDA. So actually, as you can see, we really need the players on the market of the capital, and we are really interested in those family offices from Germany, in the venture capital funds from Germany, both in syndicate financing of companies here and in attracting money as a limited partners in our funds. So we are very ready and open to communicate on all those issues. We have a really good pipeline of early stage seed round and A round companies to invest in. And we are ready to share those pipelines with our future companies. So, and finally, startups. So on the left side, you see some of the startups that became very successful and were either sold to the final investors, and the companies like Maps.me was and Flow actually now cost more than $300 million. But on the other side, you see that only in fintech sphere we have a lot of startups and players on the local market who are willing to have the partners from Europe, from German side. And actually, what I can say that we are really interested in further communication and in exchanging of all information that we have on the local market and on the possible collaboration with each other. So thank you so much for being with me those 10 minutes. I'm very ready to answer all your questions either right now or afterwards. Thank you.
Alexander, thank you very much for your presentation. We're now actually ready for the discussion phase. We want to keep it compact. So we invite Mark Hauptmann, Alexander Kulitz, and Kirill, Alexander, and Tobias for so to say the podium discussion, and that everybody else can address their questions directly to the presenters. Okay. And Kirill Zaletsky from High Tech Park will moderate this discussion phase. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah, loud and clearly.
And I would like to ask Alexander Bonder to switch off his sharing the screen. We can see his key team members. Yeah, like this. So I think that the last presentation was very, let's say, very informative about what the ecosystem of Belarus needs right now. I think that this is the homework that we have been done in the last half a year. Our efforts to do some local mechanisms for venture financing for startups and new companies. And I think that this can be a very good, let's say, a very good trend to talk to the German partners, because as we discussed in January in Bundestag in all our meetings, there is like a two-way street, because of course the German partners will not, let's say, be they are not very, let's say, eager to invest only by themselves. They always need a local partner who will share their costs and share their risks with the while investing into the new companies or while making some kinds of venture investments. And I think that the latest improvements that Alexander just explained about the formation of the new venture fund for Belarus can be this instrument not only for the local startups but also for the German capital to participate. So I think maybe I would like to ask the opinion of those who are, let's say, linked to the German venture capital of the prospects of participation of German partners in the new funds which will work directly on the Belarusian markets. Who can comment on that?
Well, I'm probably not the best to comment on the VC side. Of course, we do have some friends, and probably we should, within the next meetings, get them along, because they do represent some of the bigger VC companies. But as you might know, Germany is not the hub for VCs international-wise. So even if we talk about the big German VCs, or some of them are even situated in Switzerland, like Lakester, for example, Mr. Hommels or others, I believe we could, yes, we could try to address them because they can most definitely more adequately talk about their needs and the necessities. I think Tobias mentioned a lot of the risks earlier on when he showed the table. And this is one of the main issues that keeps German investment also from refraining a little bit out of Belarus. And I think there's a lot of things that have happened in Belarus, as we just heard, and there has been a lot of initiatives, so that German capital is welcome also to Belarus. But I think one thing that we should always consider, and this was my idea, Kirill, when we were talking in January also in Berlin about it. One thing I haven't seen yet in Belarus is if you look at the co-investing and the crowdfunding platforms, there is not a lot of options so far in Belarus. Now, one of the main risks, if you have an investment from Germany, for one is of course currency risks. And another thing is you do not want to invest in big tickets. Now, usually venture capitals work with big tickets. So you have to invest, I don't know, 10, 20,000 euros to get a proper ticket and to really invest in the company. The idea that might work very well in Belarus is if you don't consider German capital to be in big tickets, rather than going into a crowdsourcing idea where you collect small tickets, and so you don't get inflicted with currency issues, you try to tokenize them. Because as far as I learned last time in Belarus, it's no problem with the blockchain ideas and tokenize the contracts and smart contracts even to go into an investment field. So why not tokenize smaller tickets? Might it be 50 euros, 100 euros, 1,000 euros, doesn't matter. Tokenize them and take them to Belarus. Of course, there's a lot of things that have to be considered, and we were looking at one or two already in Germany. In Germany, you always have the issue, but I'm sure Tobias can say more about that when we talk about the prospectus, the Wertpapierhaftungsgesetz, all these questions. We have like this agency, the BaFin, and they are responsible for everything that is, so it's not quite as easy, but there is means and ways to work around that. I'm quite sure not to work around that, but to work with that. So I think there's a lot of potential. The question is how to put, well, first of all, you need the right people to assemble the right people to get things done. And secondly, the question is how do you get it on the way? But I believe there's a huge potential and there might be possibilities if we don't talk about the classical VC business module, because it's going to be difficult to convince German companies to invest a lot of money. It's going to be easier due to the risks that Tobias already showed, that if we are able to get a lot of money, but not in big tickets, in smaller tickets with a wider variety of people, I believe that's a huge potential for Belarus. But that's my personal opinion. Not sure if people share that or not, but that would be one way that I would love to, in future, to stay in the discussion and work on, if it is of any interest, also from your side, Kirill, to find a solution on that side. I think that might be an interesting potential that we should have a closer look at.
I can comment this from my side. I'm Evgeny from Microsoft Belarus. I'm a representative of Microsoft Belarus, so driving a local office. And we, together with our business development team, have met High Tech Park many times. Now we are working on a strategic agreement between Microsoft and High Tech Park, because we see a lot of potential and a lot of actually big startups which we are considering to invest, like Flow, for example. Last evaluation was 350 million. And we were not there, unfortunately, but maybe next round. And I agree with Alexander and Kirill, and could not agree with your idea, Alex. Sorry for that. That we need to try to attract more smaller checks, because I think local ecosystem from seed or even seed plus stage is already pretty much developed, and local angels are contributing a lot, and they're investing with these small checks up to, I don't know, several $100,000. And what we are really missing here is that for local ecosystem development is bigger checks with, I don't know, starting from 1 million, 2 million to up to 10, something like this. This was presented by Alexander as well. And this is needed for growth stage. And we have a lot of companies and startups who now on this stage. And the problem is that they're talking to Silicon Valley directly, and they are considering to relocating and structuring in US due to this reason, because investors from Silicon Valley are not invest too much in startups which are somewhere in Eastern Europe. So that's why I think this biggest opportunity for German capital would be to participate, joint investor as a fund who have mandate to invest in the funds, and this will contribute to local system. So you can comment from your side, Kirill and Alex, because I think this what we discussed a few times, and this is really the most, let's say, demanded thing right now, from my perspective and from Microsoft perspective, because we as Microsoft, we couldn't invest on a round A. Usually we join later, like in the case with PandaDoc, it was 15 million check, and we see that these companies are not ready yet, and we need to have this middle, element in the chain. So this is from my side.
If I may add something, because as Alex, as you mentioned already before, I think it's a very typical approach of German companies to look, of course, at the risks. And why I was also mentioning risks before is not because I believe that these risks should scare somebody away. You just need to be aware of the risks, and then you need to have somebody who has an experience in how to mitigate them. Because there is, in almost all situations I've seen, there was a way, a structure, a tool to mitigate the risks if you are aware of them in time. And also, if we are thinking about bigger checks, we've heard some numbers. Yeah, there, for example, the German government is also doing a lot to support investments abroad. I'm thinking here, for example, to the so-called Bundesgarantie or Investment Garantien des Bundes. Yeah, the German investment guarantees provided by the German economy, by the German government, actually. Yeah, which is administered by the Euler Hermes and by the German Ministry of Finance. They give German companies the opportunity to provide a guarantee, so to give them the courage to invest abroad, for example, also in companies in Belarus. And one of our clients at the moment, they were just succeeding in getting such an investment guarantee issued by the German government in order to secure their investment, to make sure if something goes wrong, that they are on the safe side. Happily enough, until now, I'm not aware of any case where such an investment guarantee was actually used, but it's actually for larger investments an absolute standard, and whoever plans to make such a bigger investment should get acquainted with such possibilities.
I also could pass and ask Kirill to comment, because actually from our perspective, from my experience, I see High Tech Park as a great tool, as a great, let's say, institute which can guarantee at least that the quality of the startup, of the people, of the founders, that it's sufficient for the deal. Because, you know, any VC deal is a risk. and High Tech Park can guarantee that there is no any threat from kind of, you know, with a criminal nature or something like this, because they're working on a daily basis with all these companies. And I think if this company or startup is a member of High Tech Park, it's almost impossible to have such a risk which you're discussing right now.
If I may add also, yes, just a few topics. I also see with great interest that Alexander Thees, the managing director of our state-owned bank KfW Capital, is also among us. And the KfW actually provides a lot of assistance to the German venture capital companies when either the KfW and, for example, the European Investment Fund, they provide some serious inputs into those venture capital funds. We're talking about 20% of each side that they put basically as an input into those funds. And if you look at the landscape in Germany, what we have seen in the last couple of years is that, especially in early stage investment, Series A and B rounds, the ecosystem grew a lot. And therefore, those transactions are something that is a daily business for German venture capital companies. What we have tried as a political supporter in this matter is to also provide some assistance that the German funds can also step in when it comes to Series C investments, so the bigger tickets that Alex already talked about. So this is something that we will see in the next years to come, that German venture capital companies will not only do smaller ticket investments up to maybe 10 million or 15 million, but they will also be able to provide a serious finance in Series C tickets. And this is something that we are, thanks to the KfW, thanks to the European Investment Fund, supporting from our side. But also I see the big potential if a German venture capital company would step in with a Series A or B investment. If you look at the German funds, what kind of follow-up investment they can generate with other funds. So for example, what Evgeny talked about, that other structures and other funds are stepping in as co-investors. And this is really remarkable. So even a mid-sized German venture capital fund creates above 1 billion of follow-up investment. So this is not something that you don't see, that you now see more and more happening. And this is, I think, something that can bring the different fund sizes together from also different ecosystems, whether we're talking about a European, maybe an Israeli or US ecosystem. For the Germans to jump in with Series A and B is something I think that can really be beneficial also for the bigger tickets in the future.
Thank you very much. I think that someone else wants to comment, please.
Yes, this is Alexander Thees, because Gerd Hoffmann just mentioned me. I raised my hand via the Zoom function just to make a few comments for KfW Capital. I think it was just said, the subsidiary of KfW and in charge of venture capital fund investments. So we're a classical LP. We do not invest directly in startups, but in funds. We started our business in October 2018, and in the meantime, we have more or less 40 fund investments on our balance. The most important criteria for us, of course, is that the funds have a German angle, which means that they have a track record in Germany and that they are able to make deals in Germany. So in the German VC ecosystem, for the reason that Gerd Hoffmann already mentioned, of course, we have a political mandate to support the ecosystem in Germany. But most of the funds we do invest in have a European scope. They are not focused on Germany and they do not have to be focused. Important is that the amount we do invest in the funds comes back to Germany. So this is important. Maybe a few general comments. I think what was said is very important. Of course, venture capital investment always implies risks. So this is, of course, absolutely natural. When I think we have to think in opportunities, which is very important. My impression is that what is really important, not only in Belarus, but also in Germany, even in Germany, a more developed VC market for us, maybe, is transparency. I think it's very hard to show to investors, to potential LPs, what the track record of a German or a Belarus market, or in general of the asset class VC was in the past. So we tried hard to address this issue and give more transparency and to show that the yields and you could make in the past are quite profitable and interesting. This is very important to convince investors to come to a new market and to show a track record regarding the investments of the past. And in this context, I think it's also important to show, or maybe to think about first for the Belarus market, do the startups in Belarus have a global ambition at the second step, or do they prefer to stay domestic? Because we understand from many investors and from many GPs who do invest in startups that they want to see the startups to go global, because we all know to receive a sufficient market share to survive these markets necessarily means to be global and not to be focused on the domestic market, whether it is a German market or the Belarus market. So this would be a question I have to the participants from the Belarus side. Thank you.
I would comment a bit on this. You know, in Belarus we have a rather unique situation because we have a very low domestic market, and practically all of our startups and the companies which are on mid-size or even high level already, they always go for the world market. So not even the regional market, not the Russian market, not Belarus market, but their ambitions are always spread to the whole world. And that is the main advantage of the Belarus startup ecosystem. They do not rely on the domestic money, which we actually do not have in the amount that the ambitious of the founders are.
Okay, thank you. It's very interesting.
Thank you very much. It was a very interesting conversation for me, and I will like to react for some points. First, about the comments of Mr. Kulis. Thank you. Of course, we are thinking about all this stuff, especially like to tokenize the small checks. I think that it can be a very good like homework for us as well, because I think that in future we are going to have some few sessions in few weeks and then months, and when we show the landscape of Belarus fintech, we have already companies who have already tokenized the assets of Belarusian like real sector companies, and the platforms are already there, so you can tokenize assets easily. So this is the practice and the experience which is already going on right now. You can find it on the internet. And also, I would like to react about the global or domestic, and to support the idea of Alexander that Belarus, actually the high-tech park of Belarus, it's let's say its success, I think a big portion of success is based on the fact that there is no domestic market in Belarus, that from the very start the companies and the startups and all the players on the market, they focus on outside markets, and this motivates them to develop their skills and qualifications. Because in other jurisdictions, when the local government support IT sector by giving some government orders or some subsidies just to give loans or just money, it doesn't motivate the companies to develop. We never gave from the government, we never invested a single dollar from the government to the high-tech park. We just provided the conditions to work in. And also I'd like to thank Mr. Hautman, who also just gave his very, let's say, valuable comments. I think here, on this point, as a former diplomat, I used to be a diplomat for 16 years. I know very well that this is a very, let's say, it's a very complicated task to persuade some investor to come to be the first on some very new topic. Either it's like investments from some country to this country, or to be an investor to some venture stories in a new territory. And that's why I think it can be a very good story. I think that if the partners from the new venture structure which has been organized in Belarus and the partners from Germany, if they talk to each other, I think they can find some kinds of first steps of cooperation. It can be, I think it can be also the participation as LP on a very small portion, just to try, because just together with other LPs who I think will be quite considerable and credible people and credible structures. I think that even some kinds of financial international institutions can become such structures. So I think that we need to just keep tracking, to keep contact between all the participants of today's event, just to figure out what the next step can be. So I think we have just Minsk time 1:30. So that means that we need to wrap up because there are too many comments that people need to go further on time. I would like to thank everyone. I would like to thank both Stefan Hoffman and Stefan Kegebein for organizing this. I would like to thank once again Mr. Collins, Mr. Hautmann, which are our friends from Bundestag. And I would like to thank everyone else who joined us. And Stefan Hoffman, I'm giving you the final remarks.
Thank you, Kirill. Thank you very much, first of all, to all speakers. My job is now to announce the next events we are planning. By now, we are planning a series of 3 events. And the next event will be in 2 weeks, on the 29th of June at 14 o'clock Central European Time. And we will talk about finance, about fintech and related startups. And after the summer break in September, we are planning to speak on the 7th of September about health, and on the 15th of September about artificial intelligence. So I hope we will see you in 2 weeks and in September again. And then we will present not only associations and officials from both countries. No, we will also present startups with real solutions in these industries. And I also ask you to share about these events in your group, in your peer groups, among your business partners, that they might find already an opportunity for investments in real Belarusian startups who want to go abroad. So thank you very much again. We will, I already received an answer if we can share some presentations. I will ask the presenters from today to hand me over their presentations, and then we will find a way how we can spread the presentations from today to all the interested guys. Thank you very much. And if you don't have any more questions.
And also the video recording, we will share this. So today's event was live on Facebook, but we also made a recording that will go on the YouTube channel of events-belarus.com. And we will share this with all of you.
I think we got hand ups from Mr. Hautmann and Mr. Kegebein.
Okay, then not my last word.
I just wanted to applaud to the organizers. So I still leave the last words to you guys. Thanks a lot.
So same to me. So I'm glad to get in the next 3 sessions more in sectors. But I guess today it was a good start to get an overview about the scene and the needs and the topics when it comes to investments in venture capital. Just applaud from my side.
Then it was applaud, not the hands up. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and see you next time.
Have a nice week.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.